Okay, so the last one-step sparring techniques that we have, we call our entries. And these are designed so that it gives both an attacker and a defender an appreciation of close proximity grappling and the potential of being taken to the ground quite quickly. So the first one of them, assisting instructor Nathaniel is going to help me with. Essentially, we set it up in exactly the same way as we would with our one-step sparring, so that it is controlled and there's little risk of you being hit in class. Now, I recommend, particularly with these entries at one-step level, that people wear a mouth guard if you're at all concerned about contact to the face, because we are starting to move towards the person. So, assistant instructor Nathaniel still shouts and punches in his normal fashion as one-step sparring would. Shoot! Shoot! From here, I need to move towards his body, but I'm going to do it at a slight angle, and I'm going to go to my front shell. So as I move forward, I create this shell, and then I make contact with him. So this shell, I have to leave attached to my head until I feel that contact. And when I feel the contact, I bring my hips in, and I open my arms up, and I clinch behind his back. I grab my own wrist. Now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to shuffle around. If my head or face is pointing in the direction that it currently is, I need to shuffle under his right armpit. So it will look a little bit like this. I use my left shoulder to bump his arm up into the air and shuffle around. And you can see here that allowed me to come around to his back. I'm going to keep my head in nice and tight so that if he's swinging elbows towards me, it's very difficult for him to make any sort of meaningful contact. Now from here, I've still got my hips in quite tight to him, and I've got this clinch onto my own arm. Sometimes I might have gotten a clinch onto his wrist, and I might hold it in that fashion, and then I'll just hold my own wrist, or I can hold his arm. Either way, I've got reasonably good security of that arm and his body. From here, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to extract my left arm, and then I'm going to bring it over the top of his shoulder like a harness. So it just comes over the top, and then it grabs my own wrist. So I've got a harness now across his body, and then from there, for coloured belts, all we're going to do is we're just going to bump the hips so you can feel his centre of gravity change, and then from there I'm just going to just shuffle back slightly so that I can feel the control of him. Shoot! Shoot! The final one-step sparring technique is called entry B. The purpose of this particular technique is not so much about making us competent at moving in and taking someone to the ground, but once again also for the person that's being taken to the ground, it gives us an overall appreciation of if someone's determined just to put you down on the ground, that they're probably going to succeed at that. So we need to have a feeling, we need to understand the motions of it, how it's going to feel, so that we're better prepared for it if we are ever taken to the ground. Plus also training like this gives you a bit more of an understanding on what other people are training in other martial arts to get us down on the ground with them. Alright, so Assistant Instructor Nathaniel is going to help me with this today. Once again, for safety, we've set this up as a one-step sparring technique. Assistant Instructor Nathaniel is going to punch with his right hand again. Shoot! Shoot! I create this shell protection again. So I've evaded the punch, and then I just move forward for contact. So as soon as I feel that contact, I'm going to do the same thing as I did last time. I'm going to open my arms up and clinch in. From here, what I want though is I want a little bit of forward momentum. So I'm just going to keep that forward weight onto him as I drop down onto my knees. Now, once I'm down on my knees, you can see my arms have come around his legs here. What I'm doing is I'm actually closing the gap between his legs to make him less stable. Also, if I'm going to take him to ground, I want to have my head on the same side of my body as my upright leg. What that allows me to do is to drive off this right leg of mine and also use my head as a bit of a lever as I take him to ground. If my head was on the wrong side of the body or the other side of the body, I would just simply go forward on my knees. And there's another drill that we'll demonstrate in another video regarding that. Alright, so now I'm going to take Assistant Instructor Nathaniel to ground. I close up his legs and I lift and drive. Okay, so I've got Nathaniel down on the ground now. I want to maintain a bit of control of his legs until I set myself up. So from here what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep applying this weight through him. I've got my shoulder in his stomach area and my head, and you can see I can come up onto my toes and keep a lot of weight pinning him to the ground while I set myself up. From here I'm going to drive my body up his body, and then at a time of my choosing I can release that grip around his legs and get my leg over the top and continue to drive my head up towards his head. If he's throwing punches, etc., I'm just creating a shell to protect my head. Now from here, I'm going to posture up. If he's grabbing my head, I can use my fist into his throat and posture back, and then I'm going to use the normal technique to make sure that my head comes right away from him. From here now, I'm going to go up, pop up into a knee ride and escape, just like we did in the other lesson. So it's hands on, pop up, knee ride, and then if we need to, we can strike to distract, but otherwise, we're just going to move away from our defensive stance.